Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Black Lawyers Podcast. Today, we have the pleasure of interviewing Keith Beauchamp. He is the producer of the Till movie based on Emmett Till's life and his mother. And we're just so excited today to have you. The film is doing amazing. Welcome to the podcast.
Wow, thank you so much for having me.
Yes. So my listeners know I make everyone play Black lawyer hot topics, whether you're a lawyer or not, anything that's going on in Black law, you play hot topics, just your personal opinion about some of the things that are kind of going on in the world. One of the first things that recently hit the news in the last probably 24 hours, Brittany Griner, who is detained in Russia because of her vape pen that was found in her suitcase. We all know that she was found guilty and that she was going to appeal it. And so most people stood in the opinion that, okay, this is probably a formality, right? That she's going to appeal it. It may or may not work. And so we found out today it didn't work. They did not grant her appeal. And so just to imagine an American, Black American citizen in a foreign country, they are stuck in jail for, it appears, a 9-year sentence because of accidentally leaving a vape pen in her suitcase. What are your thoughts on that?
I haven't been following as much as I should, but I kind of feel like, the government needs to step in a little bit more, like we've seen the government step in on many of these kind of cases that have happened in the past. The U.S. government is very silent about this, although I've heard some rumblings in the past of Biden trying to do the best that he can to get Brittany back here on American soil. But, we're living in turbulent times right now. You have this war in Ukraine and Russia going on at the moment. This is a terrible time for this to be taking place, especially if you're African American and you're over in Eastern Europe.
For sure. And I mean, not that you ever want to be, I don't know if you've ever watched Locked Up. What is it called? It was like, it's a popular.
Lock Up.
No, not Love After Lock. That's a funny one too. But no, there's one where you get locked up overseas.
Oh,
and they do
Locked Up Abroad.
Locked Up Abroad, and they have all these scary tales of like people getting locked up. And I was like, oh my God, this is like like the worst case of Locked Up Abroad. And it's like, not that you ever want to get arrested at any time, but like she literally got arrested right before everything happened with Ukraine and Russia. So, obviously our prayers are with her. She did not win her appeal. So legally, the only way that she is going to see her way out of this is a swap. And they are thinking about swapping her with, they want at least two Russian prisoners that we have. But one of them, I think, has this death name who supposedly did awful things. They want him back, and they want, I think, one other person back. So I think that's why Biden hasn't budged just yet, because I think they think they're over asking. But at the same time, it's like, now she doesn't have her appeal. So we're really in a corner about who they're going to ask for in her exchange. So it should be really interesting to see when the exchange happens and who the exchange will end up being. And
I agree. I definitely agree. I actually, I believe the swap should happen. It's happened for a lot less people. And so, in the past with different countries and conflict. Right. So certainly, I mean, we could do something for Brittany now.
Yes, for sure. And so we're just going to pray that this is going to happen sooner versus later, since the formality is over with the appeal. Now the swap can take place, and that she is back in United States soil safely. In terms of another hot topic, which just will not go away, Mr. Kanye West, stands in what he believes, and, has recently made comments that some believe are anti-Semitic. And so I think at one point he was like, well, if you do this or you do that, you're just making my point, right? You're making my point for me. You're pulling things away from me that you're making my point, right, for me. And so things keep getting taken away from him. There were certain deals with, I believe, well, not even so much deals, like collaborations with like
Yes.
Anna Wintour, Vogue, and Balenciaga and things like that. But the biggest one everybody knows is Adidas. And so Adidas,
Yes.
of course, was very quiet for the last 2 weeks. I think they were just hoping he would simmer down, maybe switch topics, talk about something else. But it's like he kind of stood 10 toes down on what he was saying, what he felt like about, Black people in business and ownership and things like that. Which again, those things aren't wrong. I do believe what he's saying about us owning our own and being in
Yes.
positions of our own power is true. Some of his direct comments in certain, racial groups, of course, he should have left that out, right? But he
Yes.
didn't do that, and so now Adidas has finally decided to not move forward. And so a lot of people are like, oh wow, I can't believe Adidas is really not going to move forward with him and his Yeezy brand. And I am being, my brain is thinking over time. I said, you know what? I believe one of his main contracts with them expired in 2021, I believe.
Okay.
And perhaps there was a future collaboration that was going to happen. But a part of me, and I could be wrong, a part of me feels like he kind of wants to do his own thing anyway. And so this is a way to get out of these contracts. It's like if you say something that they're not going to like, then they'll let you
Mm.
out the contract because they don't want to deal with you anymore versus you breaching it. I think the same thing has happened with his recording deal. I don't know if you remember, he called it a slave contract.
Yeah.
They now
Yes.
no longer want to move forward with his record deal, but he wanted to get out of that contract anyway. So
Mm.
it appears, I don't know if this is him being extra smart or it's just working out for him, that a lot of
Mm.
these deals are like falling apart, but in a way they're falling apart in his favor because he kind of wants to be able to have his own autonomy with his music and his
Mm.
label and things like that. So just what are your just general thoughts about all these, deals falling apart in Kanye's next move?
Well, Brother Ye, I'm a huge fan of. I just have to say that we have to be conscious that he may be going through an episode. And so, it's just seeing everyone cut him off and the way they're cutting him off, even the way the platforms he was given recently, and he
Mhm,
was allowed to vent, I
mhm,
guess, and to speak his mind. I think we have to be conscious that he does have a mental illness and he probably is having an episode. And I worry about that because of the fact that we're allowing him to continue to speak publicly. And he's been attacked as if he invented racism. And that bothers me. We haven't seen this type of outrage since we've seen Trump.
mhm,
And there's a lot of people that I can name
mhm.
who are outright racist, who
Right,
people continue to support regardless on the things that they say. So,
right.
Brother Ye needs help. We need to
Mhm,
be conscious of that. We should not be allowing him to have these type of platforms because America, unfortunately, we like to build people up and tear them down in public. And that's what's happening.
mhm,
And so I
mhm,
don't agree with the way things are being handled. Kanye made his money. He's a brilliant man. I'm sure that he will be able to come back on top again, but he does have a serious problem that we have to be aware of.
for sure, for sure. And I love what you say about, we kind of live in this society of building people up and then in public and tearing
Exactly.
them down, kind of similar to what happened with Will Smith. There were a lot of things where it's like,
That's right.
we just want to cancel people. And I don't know if you recently saw Dave Chappelle and a couple other people supported Will's private screening of his movie. And I just love to see that picture because I believe he's coming out with Emancipation. Um,
Yes.
I just love to see like, other people still supporting him because people were just so quick, even after he apologized a million times, because everybody has their
Yes.
moment, even without mental illness. We all have our moments where we say
That's
something
right.
and maybe we meant something else, or we didn't mean to offend, or we did something we didn't mean to offend. And we're just so quick to cancel. This cancel culture is just crazy. And I'm sorry, I don't agree. I don't agree with cancel culture, especially if A, someone has mental illness, or B, and or they're seeking help, they're seeking forgiveness, they're apologizing. So I love
Yes.
what you said about us not tearing people down in public. I think they do need to stop giving him a public platform to speak. I think at this point, you
Absolutely.
said what you need to say. We don't need to hear anything else, and so, yeah, it should be interesting to see what happens next. I mean, probably within maybe the last week, he's pretty much any sort of collaboration, sponsorship, everything he's kind of
Mhm.
lost in terms of collaboration.
Yeah,
So it should be
absolutely.
interesting to see what he does next. And obviously, here at the Black Leaders Podcast, obviously we'll be monitoring him and what he's
Yes.
doing. But we appreciate your feedback on that. We know sometimes it's a hard topic to talk about Kanye because he is loved. He is loved by the Black
Yeah, he's beloved and he's very talented. And
community.
all of us, I mean, I love his music. I think
Hmm.
he's a brilliant man. But like I said, I believe he's going through his episodes. And if you've been around people who are bipolar, who have
Hmm.
mental illness, then you will
Hmm.
understand it.
Right.
And so I think he's being exploited at this
Oh yeah.
moment in time
Hmm.
because news, unfortunately, has become entertainment in many ways. And that's
Yes.
how they're making their money. And
Yes.
so I just wish, people just be conscious of what they're doing and
Hmm.
understand the problems that exist with this man and
Hmm.
that he needs some time,
Right.
to get over his problems that he's dealing with. He's been
Right.
through a lot in the past decade.
Right. He for sure has. And so we wish Kanye well. We hope that whatever he's going through, things balance themselves out. And that, there is a level of forgiveness when it's time for that point for Kanye.
Absolutely.
Um, with that being said, we want to jump to why we're here today. Obviously, to ask you a few questions about this film movie, which will be nationwide on the 28th. I know there's some
Yes.
early screenings right now going on. I've had the pleasure of being one of the people to see one of the early screenings and
Wow.
just was blown away. And I didn't know what to expect, to be honest with you, because I'm like, well, I already know the story. It was one of those things where, what can I get out of this if I already know the story? And so I was just really blown away. And so congratulations, amazing job.
Thank
Before we
you.
jump into a few of the questions about the film, we first just want to start a little bit with about more about you. So my first question is, who was Keith before Keith, the filmmaker, the producer? Who were you? So
That's a
let's
hard
rewind
question.
just a little bit. You don't have to go back to
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
elementary school, I mean, unless you want to, but maybe like college, like kind of, I want to know what, like right before you became this, what was your path? Because a lot of times people want to get into, producing and directing and writing and things like that. And so just tell us a little bit about your journey right before you became, a producer or a filmmaker.
Well, first of all, again, thank you for this platform. And, you're taking me back some ways because most of my life, my identity has been Emmett Till because of
Mhm.
the work that I've done. And so my journey with Emmett Till started when I was 10 years old. I grew up in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and I was in my parents' study and I came across an old Jet magazine that they kept over the years. And in that magazine was the story of Emmett Till. That's how I discovered it. And as I opened the pages, there's this angelic face of this young little boy on one side of the page. And on the other side of this page, there's this horrific face of this monster. And I could not understand what happened to this young man or this young boy, I should say. Let me be careful with that,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
But my parents just so happened they were walking by the study. They looked in on me. My mother walked in and she saw me with my mouth open. And she looked over my shoulder and she saw that I discovered the photograph of Emmett Till's corpse. And then she calls my father in and they both looked at each other and they said, it's time to tell him the story. But throughout my life, the name Emmett Till kept resurfacing. When I got to high school, I was interracially dating. The first thing my parents would tell me before I left the house at night was, don't let what happened to Emmett Till happen to you. So it became an educational tool to teach me about the racism that still exists in this country. But it wasn't until 2 weeks before my high school graduation where I had my real run-in with racism. And that was when I was assaulted by an undercover police officer for dancing with a white classmate of mine. And that's what made me want to fight injustice. Didn't quite know how that could happen without being involved in the system itself. So I decided to study criminal justice at Southern University of Baton Rouge in hopes of becoming a civil rights attorney. But then towards my junior year of college, I was introduced to filmmaking by my childhood best friend who moved to New York City with his sister and started their own film production company. And it was at that time where I had this conversation with my parents. Look, if this thing doesn't work out, let me sit out the semester. If it doesn't work out, I'll go back, finish undergrad, go to law school as planned. Um, it worked out for me. As simple as that. I actually decided to take on the story of Emmett Till when I first started working for my childhood friend's company. I was asked if there was a story I wanted to tell. Of course, Emmett Till, the name that I heard most of my life, came to mind. And when I decided to take on that task, I said the only way that could be possible that I could tell this story and the rightful way that it should be told is through the family standpoint of the people who lived it. So I initially reached out to Emmett Till's mother. I called her. I was at my side job at Estee Lauder headquarters, in which is funny, New York City. And I'm sitting in the office and I pick up the phone and I dial the number and she picks up and I quickly hang up in her face
Oh, wow.
because I was very nervous. I didn't know what type of state of mind she would be in. And certainly I did not want to open up old wounds. And so after I hung up, I fussed at myself sitting at my desk. I didn't move to New York City to work in anybody's office or to work in corporate America. But I said, I'm gonna call her back and talk with her and see if she would support me in this endeavor. And so I called her back, and when she picked up the phone, I immediately apologized to her. I explained to her it was me that called previously, and I told her why I hung up the phone. And she just told me that, just to relax, talk to her, for 2.5 hours. We talked the first time. So that was early, mid 95. I didn't meet Mother Mobley face to face until 2 weeks before Christmas in 1996.
Okay, so a year later.
A year later, and when we met, the way she would say it, it was as if it was a love affair because we knew so much about each other at that moment in time that we just gelled. And she became my mentor. Well, first my friend, of course, and then my mentor for 8.5 years until she took her last breath.
What has been your best experience? Because I know you have a documentary ahead of this actual feature from Till.
Yes.
I know your journey, like you said, started with your documentary. But with the actual movie Till, or even the documentary, just this whole experience, what would you say has been the best experience, and what has been the most challenging experience?
Well, I want to clear up something. The documentary was something that I did not really want to pursue. I was trying to produce the feature film first. I ended up writing a screenplay before I met Mother Mobley in early 1995, and it was optioned off by producers who work with Showtime. And after I signed the option agreement, they sat on the project, so I didn't have any control over it for 3 years.
I see.
So just so happened when I met Mother Mobley, she knew this was going on. I'm glad that film was never made, but she knew that, I was dealing with that issue legally. And she understood that it was going to be very difficult for me to produce a film that I wanted to produce. And so she basically became the inspiration and encouraged me to produce the documentary because with all the research that I was conducting at that time, I was finding witnesses who have never spoke publicly before. I was finding out new evidence in the case at that time. So we wanted to quickly get it out to the masses. And the best way we could have done it was by way of the documentary. And so it started off as research materials for me. If you go and watch, if you've seen the untold story of Emmett Lewis Till, it's not the best shot. And the reason being is because I was out interviewing witnesses, making sure that I recorded them by tape because I didn't know if I was going to ever see them again. Then I realized that it was sort of taking depositions.
Mhm.
And so when I
You still
finally
you still got to
decided,
become a lawyer, right?
that's what I'm saying is, yeah,
It was a
exactly.
very full circle moment for you. You still,
Full circle. And so when that started happening, of course, we're looking at all these tapes and information that I was gathering. And that's when she encouraged me to use that footage and stuff and build it into a documentary. And we were able to do that. It took me 9 years to produce The Untold Story. And of course, ultimately, it led to the reopening of the case in 2004.
Right. And I just want to close out with just one or two other questions. You mentioned how it's like depositions and just looking for witnesses and evidence and things like that. One of the things that people will see in the film is that there was always this question over, was that really his body? You know, obviously there was a ring, and of course a mother knows her son, but that was one of the defenses, that maybe it really wasn't him and he was just missing.
Yes.
So can you give us a quick, just like intel on like, why DNA maybe wasn't used back then? Did they not have like fingerprints? Were there not?
Yeah.
It just seems very strange. And maybe back then they just did not have that.
You're actually asking great questions. Mother Mobley actually tried to get an exhumation done in 1955 after the trial, but they would not allow it.
I
And
see.
so all these many years, all the way up to 2004, there's been this mystery among some. Is this body, in fact, Emmett Till? You know, because back then, what their argument was is the body was too badly decomposed to be that of Emmett Till. They were saying that they couldn't determine if the body was black or white. They were also, saying that this was an NAACP plot, that they actually got a cadaver and planted the cadaver in the river. So you had all these, rumors swirling around, but we were able to put that all to rest in 2005 when Emmett Till's body was exhumated. We did an exhumation of his body. And through DNA evidence, we were able to prove, thanks to the late Simeon Wright, we were able to prove that, in fact, the body that was pulled from the river, the body that everyone has seen, is in fact Emmett Till.
So our final question, because I know we have to wrap up soon, is, we all know that there was a search warrant recently found, and, the DA decided not to, pursue it because he felt like it was too old. There would be some new evidence that he would have to present in order to feel comfortable, right, moving forward. So where does that really leave this now? I mean, she's obviously still alive. So where are we with
first
that?
of all, I'm glad you asked this question too. First of all, the warrant is still an active warrant.
Okay.
It's an outstanding warrant that hasn't been served yet. The DA convened a grand jury to circumvent having to deal with the warrant aspect of the case. And so the warrant is not rescinded. It has to be rescinded by a judge.
Okay.
And the DA has to show probable cause to why the warrant has to be rescinded or should be rescinded. So right now, it's actually in court for a review. We're waiting to hear back from from the judge soon with our attorney Jaribu Hill, and so hopefully we'll know the status of the case at some point. But what I can tell you is that we're going to continue to fight until everyone is held accountable for their actions in terms of the participation in the kidnapping and murder of Emmett Lewis Till. Carolyn Bryant Donald is, she's guilty, and there's mounds of evidence against her. We just need to have courageous DAs out there who will be willing to take this to the court of law and pursue it.
And I wish that Emmett's mom was here to see this, but I have to believe somehow she is seeing what is being done. And I just think this film is coming out. I don't think it's a coincidence the film will come out around the time the search warrant being found, all that. I just think God is just working, and it's just aligning.
Well, I found the warrant, by the way. I was with the group that found
You found the warrant.
Yeah. So
wow.
That was done, to put pressure on the DA because he wasn't going to do anything.
Well,
so
we're going to listen. We're going to pray over, the DA or whoever else new in charge that could, like you said, have the courage to move forward. Because like you said, until Either you're gonna resend it, and if you resend it, fine. Then we're gonna ask for a new warrant. But we're gonna, like you said, we're gonna follow the steps. We're not gonna pretend that these aren't the rules and this is not how things are going to be done.
That's
So
right.
I'm glad that you clarified that it has not been rescinded. That's not something that's happened, and for whatever reason, they haven't taken that step yet. So, we will definitely be following this story closely.
Now, you can argue, well, the DA did take it to, a grand jury recently. Well, I have to say, if you haven't been to the Delta of Mississippi, you just don't know the world that you're living in. This is a totally different atmosphere than any other place in the country. And we're also talking about indicting the first white woman for a civil rights crime from the civil rights era. And so that alone is a feat within itself. And we all know, if we want to be very frank about this, we know what the white woman stands for when it comes to white supremacy in this country, the sanctity of white supremacy. So we're not merely dealing with one individual. We're dealing with a system of white supremacy that is still very active in the Delta of Mississippi, regardless of the demographics and who's in the leadership positions there.
Yes, and on that note, it's interesting that you say that, because when I'm watching the film, one of the things that I did, I was the IP attorney for the Ahmaud Arbery estate, and so when I see the film and the mom being worried about her son, it just reminded me so much of Ahmaud Arbery and his mom, Wanda Cooper Jones, that close relationship they had. Even him having the nickname Bo, I didn't know that.
Yes.
Ahmaud Arbery had the nickname Quez. And so it's just amazing. We're here, whatever, 40, 50, 60, whatever years later, and we're literally still experiencing the same things. Luckily for Ahmaud, he got justice on both the state and federal level. And so we are still seeking that justice from Emmett Till. And with that said, we just appreciate you coming in and just spending a little time with us. Would have never known that you were interested in being a lawyer. So how fitting that you get to be on the Black Lawyers Podcast, and just all the work you've done behind the scenes, in front of the camera, behind the camera, to bring his story to light again, just to bring even justice to it. I know the family is forever grateful. And with that being said, until next time, we're rooting for everyone Black. Take care, everyone.